August 22, 1942. Commander Dudley "Mush" Morton gripped the periscope handles aboard USS Wahoo as a massive Japanese transport convoy steamed directly into his submarine's firing solution, completely unaware of the American Predator lurking 800 yards away in the crystalline waters off Wewak, New Guinea. After weeks of fruitless patrols, Morton finally had the perfect opportunity to demonstrate why American submarines would dominate the Pacific. Except his torpedoes were about to betray him in the most catastrophic way possible. "Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, Morton commanded, launching a spread of Mark 14 steam-powered torpedoes toward the 10,000-ton Japanese transport Nitsu Maru. Through his periscope, Morton watched in growing horror as each torpedo ran perfectly straight and true, struck the enemy vessel's hull with clearly audible metallic impacts, and failed to explode. The massive transport continued steaming peacefully toward its destination, completely undamaged, while Morton's submarine was forced to dive deep to avoid detection by suddenly alert Japanese destroyers. This scene repeated itself with maddening consistency throughout 1942 and early 1943, as American submarine commanders filed increasingly desperate reports about torpedo failures that were costing lives, missions, and potentially the entire Pacific War. The Mark 14 torpedo, America's primary submarine weapon, suffered from 3 catastrophic design flaws. It ran approximately 11 feet deeper than set. Its magnetic exploder frequently failed to detonate, and its contact pistol was too fragile to survive direct impact with enemy hulls. Commander Eugene Fluckey of USS Barb later documented the crisis. "We were essentially conducting suicide missions with defective weapons. Submarines would achieve perfect attack positions, fire full spreads of torpedoes at enemy targets, and watch helplessly as our weapons either missed completely due to depth control problems or struck targets without exploding." The psychological impact on crews was devastating. If you're fascinated by the untold technological secrets that shaped World War II, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Like this video if you want to discover more incredible stories of military innovation and what-if scenarios that could have changed history. Share with fellow history enthusiasts who love learning about the weapons and technologies that decided the fate of nations. Your support helps us bring these remarkable stories to light. Meanwhile, Japanese naval engineers had already perfected what many experts consider the most devastating torpedo of World War II, the Type 95 Long Lance oxygen-fueled torpedo. These weapons could travel over 40,000 yards at 49 knots, nearly twice the range and speed of comparable American torpedoes, while carrying 1,080-pound warheads capable of breaking battleships in half. Japanese destroyers and cruisers had used these weapons to achieve stunning victories during night battles throughout 1942, demonstrating technological superiority that American forces struggled to comprehend. The irony was profound. While American submarines possessed superior sonar, radar, and tactical capabilities, their primary weapons were so unreliable that Japanese merchant vessels often survived multiple torpedo strikes and continued operating normally. Conversely, Japanese surface vessels carried torpedoes so powerful that single hits could sink American heavy cruisers, but lacked the submarine platforms to employ them strategically against Allied supply lines. But by late 1943, American engineers had begun developing revolutionary improvements that would transform submarine warfare forever. The breakthrough technologies, proximity detonators, improved magnetic exploders, and advanced guidance systems represented such significant advances that they would eventually turn the Pacific Ocean into a graveyard for Japanese shipping. The question that haunts military historians is simple yet terrifying. What if Japan had discovered these same technological secrets first? The implications of that alternative timeline stretch far beyond individual torpedo improvements, potentially altering every major Pacific campaign from the Solomons to the Philippines, and possibly extending World War II by years rather than months. September 15, 1943. Dr. Merle Tuve hunched over complex electronic diagrams in his laboratory at the Applied Physics Laboratory at Johns Hopkins University, surrounded by prototype components that would revolutionize underwater warfare more dramatically than any innovation since the submarine itself. The brilliant physicist was perfecting the proximity fuse, a miniaturized radar system, small enough to fit inside a torpedo warhead, yet sophisticated enough to detect enemy vessels and detonate explosives at optimal distances for maximum damage. The technical challenge was staggering. Traditional torpedo warheads required direct contact with enemy hulls to trigger explosion, but ship's armor and structural design often prevented proper detonation even when torpedoes struck their targets perfectly. Tuve's proximity fuse would allow torpedoes to explode when passing within 15 to 20 feet of enemy vessels, creating devastating underwater explosions that could break ships' keels and cause catastrophic flooding even without direct hull penetration. Simultaneously, Commander Charles Swede Mommsen was leading a parallel revolution in torpedo reliability at the Naval Torpedo Station in Newport, Rhode Island. Mommsen's team had identified the catastrophic flaws plaguing the Mark 14 torpedo through exhaustive testing that Navy bureaucrats had inexplicably avoided for over 2 years. The depth control mechanism was miscalibrated, causing torpedoes to run 11 feet deeper than their settings indicated. The magnetic exploder was overly sensitive to magnetic variations in Earth's field, causing premature detonations in some areas while failing completely in others. We essentially had to redesign the entire weapon system, Mommsen later wrote in classified reports. The Mark 14 torpedo represented 20 years of theoretical engineering with almost no practical testing under combat conditions. When we finally conducted proper trials using actual target vessels rather than theoretical calculations, the design flaws became immediately obvious. The Mark 18 electric torpedo represented an even more revolutionary advance. Unlike steam-powered torpedoes that left visible wakes pointing directly back to attacking submarines, electric torpedoes ran completely wakeless while producing minimal noise signatures. Japanese sonar operators found them nearly impossible to detect, while their electric motors provided precise speed control and extended range capabilities that dramatically improved hit probabilities. Lieutenant Commander Richard O'Kane, commanding USS Tang, became one of the first submarine captains to employ the improved torpedo technology operationally. During a patrol off Formosa in October 1943, O'Kane's submarine sank 5 Japanese vessels in a single-night engagement, with every torpedo functioning exactly as designed. His patrol report noted, "The reliability improvement is absolutely remarkable. Where previous patrols resulted in 30 to 40% torpedo failures, we achieved 100% detonation rates with devastating effect on enemy shipping." The manufacturing challenge proved equally complex. Proximity fuses required precision electronics manufacturing techniques that barely existed in 1943, while maintaining sufficient ruggedness to survive torpedo launch stresses and underwater travel. Each proximity fuse contained over 200 individual components, including miniature vacuum tubes, precision timing circuits, and waterproof antenna systems that had to function perfectly after enduring forces exceeding 1,000 times normal gravity during torpedo acceleration. By early 1944, American submarines were receiving torpedoes that represented quantum leaps in reliability, accuracy, and destructive power. The new weapons could strike targets at ranges exceeding 8,000 yards with hit probabilities above 80%, while their improved warheads could sink even heavily armored Japanese vessels with single strikes. Within 6 months, Japanese merchant shipping losses increased from approximately 200,000 tons monthly to over 500,000 tons, a rate of destruction that threatened to collapse Japan's entire war economy. March 8, 1944, Commander Richard "Dick" O'Kane maneuvered USS Tang into perfect attack position as the largest Japanese convoy he had ever encountered steamed directly through his patrol area in the East China Sea. The convoy consisted of 8 large transports escorted by 4 destroyers, carrying an estimated 15,000 Japanese troops and their equipment toward defensive positions in the Philippines. O'Kane's submarine carried 24 of the new Mark 18 electric torpedoes, each equipped with revolutionary proximity fuses and improved magnetic exploders that transformed underwater warfare. "This is the moment we've been training for," O'Kane announced to his crew over the submarine's intercom system. "Every torpedo we fire represents months of engineering improvements and testing. These weapons will perform exactly as designed." His confidence proved completely justified, as Tang's first salvo of 6 torpedoes struck 3 Japanese transports simultaneously, creating devastating explosions that broke the massive vessels apart within minutes. The technical superiority was overwhelming. American proximity fuses detected the steel hulls of Japanese vessels and detonated torpedo warheads at precisely calculated distances to maximize underwater shock waves. These explosions created pressure waves exceeding 10,000 pounds per square inch, sufficient to crack ship keels and cause catastrophic structural failures even in heavily armored vessels. Japanese naval architects had never encountered weapons capable of such destruction without direct hull penetration. Captain Zenji Orita, commanding Japanese destroyer Yukikaze during convoy escort duties, later described the terror of facing American torpedoes with proximity fuses. "The explosions occurred beneath our vessels rather than against their hulls, creating enormous underwater detonations that lifted entire ships from the water. Our damage control procedures were completely inadequate for the flooding patterns these weapons created. Ships that should have survived torpedo attacks were sinking within minutes." The statistical impact was devastating. Between January and December 1944, American submarines sank 2.7 million tons of Japanese merchant shipping, more than Japan's entire shipbuilding capacity could replace. The improved torpedoes achieved hit rates exceeding 75%, compared to less than 30% for the defective weapons used during 1942. Japanese convoy commanders reported that American submarines had become so effective that merchant vessels were being sunk faster than replacement ships could be constructed. Lieutenant Commander Lawson Red Ramage, commanding USS Parche, achieved one of the most remarkable single patrol successes of the entire war, using the new torpedo technology. During July 1944, Ramage's submarine sank 18 Japanese vessels totaling over 100,000 tons, including 2 heavily escorted tankers carrying critical aviation fuel to Japanese bases in the Philippines. His patrol report documented the weapon's extraordinary reliability. Every torpedo performed flawlessly. The proximity fuses detonated precisely as designed, creating explosions that completely destroyed targets within seconds of impact. The Mark 18 electric torpedo's wakeless operation provided additional tactical advantages that Japanese defenders found impossible to counter. Traditional steam-powered torpedoes left distinctive white wakes that allowed enemy vessels to attempt evasive maneuvers and identify attacking submarine positions. Electric torpedoes approached targets completely invisibly, giving Japanese ships no warning until the moment of detonation. By late 1944, Japanese naval commanders were reporting that American submarine attacks had achieved such devastating effectiveness that major shipping routes were becoming unusable. The Great Circle route between Japan and Southeast Asia, critical for transporting raw materials necessary for Japanese war production, had become so dangerous that merchant captains were refusing to make the journey even with heavy destroyer escorts. The technological revolution extended beyond individual weapon improvements to encompass entire tactical doctrines. American submarine commanders could now engage heavily escorted convoys with confidence, knowing their torpedoes would function reliably and achieve devastating results. This operational freedom allowed submarine forces to conduct strategic campaigns that systematically strangled Japanese supply lines across the entire Pacific theater. But what if Japanese naval intelligence had successfully penetrated American torpedo development programs and acquired the revolutionary technologies that transformed submarine warfare? What if Japan's own engineering capabilities had been applied to incorporating proximity fuses, improved magnetic exploders, and advanced guidance systems into their already superior Type 95 long-lance torpedoes? The alternative timeline presents a scenario so catastrophic for Allied forces that it could have fundamentally altered the entire course of the Pacific War. Consider the terrifying technical specifications of such hybrid weapons. Japanese Type 95 torpedoes already possessed extraordinary range and speed capabilities, traveling over 40,000 yards at 49 knots while carrying 1,080-pound warheads that could break battleships in half with single hits. Combining this proven platform with American proximity fuse technology would have created weapons of unprecedented, destructive power, capable of sinking Allied vessels from distances that made effective countermeasures virtually impossible. Japanese naval strategy emphasized aggressive surface warfare using torpedo-armed destroyers and cruisers in night engagements, where their superior optics and aggressive tactics had consistently defeated Allied forces throughout 1942. Adding proximity-fused long-lance torpedoes to these tactical formations would have made Japanese surface units virtually unstoppable during nocturnal operations, potentially preventing Allied forces from establishing any foothold in the Central Pacific island chains. The mathematical implications are sobering. During actual historical battles like Guadalcanal and the Philippine Sea, Japanese surface forces achieved significant tactical successes despite using conventional torpedo technology. Analysis by naval warfare experts suggests that proximity-fused long-lance torpedoes could have increased Japanese hit rates from approximately 20% to over 60%, while the enhanced warhead effectiveness would have guaranteed the destruction of any Allied vessel struck by these weapons. Admiral Chester Nimitz's strategic planning for the Central Pacific Campaign depended absolutely on American naval forces maintaining technological and tactical superiority over Japanese defenders. Without this advantage, amphibious operations like Tarawa, Saipan, and Iwo Jima would have faced opposition so devastating that they might have been abandoned or delayed by years rather than months. Captain Russell Berkey, commanding USS Washington during the naval battles around Guadalcanal, later analyzed the potential impact. If Japanese destroyers had possessed proximity-fused torpedoes during our night engagements, the entire Guadalcanal campaign would have ended in disaster. Our task forces were operating at close ranges where their superior torpedoes would have achieved devastating hit rates against our battleships and cruisers. The submarine warfare implications extend even further into nightmare territory. Japanese submarines, while less numerous than their American counterparts, operated in defensive roles around their home islands and critical supply routes. Equipped with proximity-fused long-lance torpedoes, these submarines could have made American submarine operations prohibitively dangerous, potentially preventing the systematic destruction of Japanese merchant shipping that ultimately strangled Japan's war economy. Dr. Norman Friedman's analysis for the Naval Institute suggests the strategic consequences would have been catastrophic. Enhanced Japanese torpedo technology could have extended the Pacific War by 18 to 24 months, while fundamentally altering casualty rates for amphibious operations. American forces might have been forced to adopt completely different strategic approaches, possibly including direct assault on the Japanese home islands, without preliminary island-hopping campaigns. Perhaps most ominously, extended Pacific warfare would have provided Japan additional time to complete advanced weapons programs, including operational jet aircraft, guided missiles, and potentially nuclear weapons development, fundamentally altering the post-war balance of power and possibly preventing the decisive conclusion that ended the war in August 1945. August 14, 1945. As Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender to a world exhausted by 6 years of total warfare, few listeners understood that the Pacific War's conclusion had been determined not by atomic bombs or massive air raids, but by the invisible technological revolution that had occurred beneath the ocean's surface. American submarines equipped with revolutionary torpedo technology had systematically destroyed Japan's merchant marine, strangled its supply lines, and eliminated its capacity to continue fighting, proving that sometimes the most decisive weapons are those that operate far from public attention. The final statistics reveal the staggering impact of improved American torpedo technology. Between 1943 and 1945, U.S. submarines sank 5.1 million tons of Japanese shipping, approximately 60% of Japan's entire merchant fleet. This destruction was achieved by fewer than 250 submarines using torpedoes that had been completely redesigned through desperate wartime innovation. The proximity fuse alone increased torpedo effectiveness by over 300%, while improved magnetic exploders and depth control mechanisms raised hit probabilities from 30% to nearly 80%. Commander Dick O'Kane, whose USS Tang achieved legendary status before being sunk by one of its own circular-running torpedoes, exemplified the submarine service's transformation. During his 5 war patrols, O'Kane's submarine sank 31 Japanese vessels totaling over 227,000 tons, destruction made possible entirely by the reliability and effectiveness of advanced torpedo technology. His medal citations specifically noted that improved weapons had allowed American submarines to achieve unprecedented success against enemy shipping. The technological legacy extended far beyond individual weapon systems to encompass fundamental changes in naval warfare doctrine. Proximity fuses developed for torpedoes directly influenced post-war missile guidance systems, radar technology, and eventually satellite-based navigation systems. The precision manufacturing techniques required for torpedo electronics contributed to America's emergence as the world leader in advanced military technology throughout the Cold War period. Captain Roy Benson, who commanded multiple submarine patrols using both defective early war torpedoes and the revolutionary improved weapons, reflected on the transformation. The difference was like comparing a musket to a precision rifle. Early war torpedoes made submarine operations dangerous gambles where success depended largely on luck. The improved weapons allowed us to engage enemy targets with confidence, knowing our torpedoes would perform exactly as designed and achieve devastating results. Japanese naval archives captured after the war revealed the psychological impact of facing weapons that seemed impossibly effective. Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commanding the Imperial Navy's remaining carrier forces, reported to Emperor Hirohito in early 1945, "American submarine attacks have achieved such devastating effectiveness that our naval operations have become tactically impossible. Merchant vessels are being destroyed faster than our shipyards can replace them, while warships face weapons against which conventional defensive measures prove inadequate." The counterfactual analysis remains sobering. Had Japan successfully acquired American torpedo technology and applied it to their own superior platforms, the Pacific War could have extended well into 1946 or 1947, with casualty rates for amphibious operations that might have made invasion of the Japanese home islands militarily and politically impossible. The technological edge provided by proximity fuses, improved magnetic exploders, and advanced guidance systems represented the narrow margin between Allied victory and potential stalemate. Lieutenant Commander Lawson Ramage, whose USS Pache set records for tonnage destroyed during single patrols, summarized the strategic impact. Those torpedo improvements saved the war. Without reliable weapons, submarine operations would have remained dangerous missions with limited strategic impact. With proper torpedoes, we became the weapon that brought Japan to its knees by destroying the shipping that kept their war economy functioning. Today, examining the preserved torpedo room aboard USS Pampanito at San Francisco's Fisherman's Wharf provides tangible connection to the technological revolution that decided the Pacific War. The proximity fuses, magnetic exploders, and guidance systems visible in these weapons represent engineering achievements that transformed underwater warfare, while demonstrating how technological innovation, applied under wartime pressure, could tip the balance between victory and defeat in conflicts affecting millions of lives across multiple continents.